Hi everyone, I'm Brendan.
And I'm Karen.
And together we're Fox and Rabbit. We're filming this, a non-scheduled program.
Yeah.
It's not actually one of our floss tubes. We're just filming this to announce a new release that we have.
Yep, we will be doing our regular floss tube this weekend. I'm part of the reason we haven't done one in the last couple of weeks because I've been trying my best to get this sampler finished on time for the launch date, which I got it finished on the day. Or the day before, but on the day. So we thought we'd do a little introduction to this beautiful sampler. It's the exclusive for the Homespun Needlework, Cross Stitch and Samplers group on Facebook. We will put that link below. If anyone doesn't belong to that group, just follow the link. You'll have to answer questions to be approved for the group. It's a fantastic group to belong to. We've been members for a while. Well, I've been a member for a while now. And what they do, apart from sharing all their lovely needlework, everyone's shows all their stitching. I think it's either 4 or 6 times a year. There's an exclusive by a designer who partners up with a shop, and that exclusive is sold through this group alone. So if you join, you'll see the link to our exclusive. The shop, we can now say, well, it's been a secret for a while, but the shop we've partnered with is a stitching shop in Denver, Colorado. Christine asked us about a year ago if we would be interested in partnering with her, which we were delighted to be asked. Julie approved us, so yep. That was very flattering. So so without further ado, we'd like to show you what our exclusive is. This is Elizabeth Broadhead, 1833. She's beautiful. I love her so much.
Hold on.
You want to hold it for me? Yeah, it's stitched on, well, the model is stitched on 40 count white clay, which is one of our new releases. Brendan will show you that fabric in a moment. It is available, I believe, through a stitching shop with 40 count, 36 count, 32 count, plus 18 count Ada. For the 18 count Ada, obviously there is an over one verse plus 2 lots of over one stitching in the cartouches. Now I couldn't obviously fit the verse in over 2, so what we've done in the chart, we've included an alternative option for the Ada stitches, or for anyone who doesn't like over one. So rather than the verse, we've got Elizabeth Broadhead's work in this little cartouche. We have aged 11 years and wrought in 1833 in the 2 little cartouches down the bottom, and I think it looks lovely either way. Obviously I love the verse, but there is an option for those who can't stitch over one,
don't want to stitch
on over one, or who are Ada stitches. We wanted to make sure there was an Ada version as well. There's some beautiful motifs on here. I love the 2 peacocks. We had unicorns. We had the 2 little girls, which I love. Beautiful flower pots. Brendan thinks these are dash hound dogs.
They're sausage dogs.
Sausage dogs. I think they should have whippets on here, but I didn't design the original, obviously. Elizabeth did. Brendan will give you a little bit of a background on Elizabeth in a moment, but the colours caught my eye. I just love them so much. They're all sort of shades of teal and browns with a little bit of like a dark black and a little bit of blue Elizabeth used around the place. This is as close to the original as I could possibly get her, so she's a true reproduction. The original is in a little museum down in sort of southern New South Wales. It was brought to our attention by one of our Australian stitchers who actually saw it in the museum. The museum is the tiniest little museum you've ever seen, and because it's a rural kind of museum, most of it is dedicated to like farming equipment and all that sort of thing. So Elizabeth was, and is, as far as I know, shoved down the back room in a little out of the way place. How this lady found it is beyond me, but you know what us stitchers are like. We can spot a sampler a mile away. So I then made an appointment. I went down to visit the museum with my friend Jody. We did a nice little road trip for the day, found the sampler, and then set about getting permission to pay for the rights and reproduce it. Then, unfortunately, which we did, we got the rights. Then to go down there and photograph it, we were held back a little bit because COVID happened. So consequently, the whole state was in lockdown for a very, very long time. There was a period of about 2 weeks where we were out of lockdown, where I was able to race down there, photograph it, And then not long after I got home, we went back into lockdown. So this has been a labour of love for a while. It was going to be a release down the track, but we decided to pick a really special one for the Homespun exclusive. So I think hopefully you'll all love it as much as we do. It is honestly my favourite sample we've ever reproduced. It's probably one of my favourite samplers I've ever seen. So, and I know that sounds a bit egotistical. I don't mean to, but I just love it that much. So hopefully you'll love it as well. So I'll just put it down for a bit. I'll just show it a little bit closer. And Brendan, I'll just hold it back here and Brendan can give you a little bit of a background on her.
So we actually don't know how the sampler itself found its way into the museum. We assume that at some stage the family has donated it, so one of Elizabeth's descendants. But we're lucky in that we were able to track down who Elizabeth was and find out a bit about her life. We know that she was born on the 27th of September in 1822 in a town called Kirkburton, which is in Yorkshire in England. She was born to David and Anne Broadhead, and she was one of 11 children that they had. Elizabeth spent the first 18 years of her life living in and around Yorkshire with her family. Her occupation was listed as a farm servant, and it was noted that she could read and write. So obviously her family was reasonably well off. In 1842, Elizabeth, her parents, and her siblings all boarded a ship called the William Sharples to journey to Australia for a new life. And we're guessing at that time, well, we know at that time that the sampler must have been packed in Elizabeth's luggage, which means it must have been pretty important to Elizabeth that she put it in her luggage, because they would have only been allowed a small luggage allowance, but this sampler managed to find its way to Australia with her. They arrived in Sydney on the 29th of January in 1842. And there's a little bit of a gap there where we haven't been able to really track the family down. We haven't been able to find where they lived when they settled here. The records for that don't actually exist. But we do know that on the 18th of February 1845, Elizabeth married a man called William Wyatt, and together they had 4 children. Now William himself has an interesting past. He's 11 years older than Elizabeth. He was born in around 1811, but he was also born in Kirkburton, so he was born in the same town. We don't know if they knew each other or the families knew each other beforehand. But William didn't have the best of lives himself. William was actually transported to Australia as a convict. So we were actually lucky we could actually find the court record or the court transcript of his trial. And William was actually convicted of theft with one of his friends. So William and 2 friends were in London, and they were observed by a police constable. So I'm not sure if they were already known by the police or not, because this guy was watching them. But William, his friend Robert, and an unknown person were walking down, I think it was Great Chapel Street in London, and they came across a tailor shop, and the tailor shop was owned by Mr. Rourke. And the unknown friend decided he liked one of the coats that were in the shop, grabbed it, and the 3 of them ran. So the police constable actually chased them and managed to catch 2 of the 3. So he managed to catch William and Robert. Unfortunately, at the time the police constable caught them, Robert had the coat on him. They were dragged back to the tailor's shop, and the tailor's daughter actually identified the coat as being the coat that was stolen. So in July 1834, the 2 of them were convicted of theft, which is, I guess, is a little bit rough for William in that he didn't actually steal anything. He was just with someone that stole something. But they were both convicted and sentenced to 7 years labour in Australia, in the penal colonies in Australia, and they were transported to Australia. So they spent a couple of months actually on one of the hulk ships that were in London, where the prisoners were actually stored. until they were ready to be shipped to Australia. And then he was shipped to Australia on a boat called the Surrey, which arrived on the 17th of August in 1834. So William spent the whole 7 years as a convict. He wasn't given an early pardon, so I guess he didn't really have any skills that were needed in the colony at the time. So he would have spent that 7 years either working as a farm labourer or building roads or infrastructure within the city. And he was granted a ticket of leave on the 14th of July 1840, once he served his sentence. So at that time, he was basically a free man to do what he wanted. And as we said, in 1845, 5 years later, he married Elizabeth. Just after they got married, Elizabeth's parents actually purchased a farm. It's a 460-acre farm called
Inverary Park.
I can never say it, I'm sorry. And it's in the Southern Highlands near Goulburn, so it's about 2 hours south of Sydney. So that farm itself was first settled in 1823, and it's one of the oldest farms in Australia. It's still an operating farm today. It's still the full 460 hectares. Luckily, it hasn't been carved up. And the family actually owned it, or descendants of Elizabeth and her parents owned the farm all the way up until 2021, when they finally sold it, because the people that had inherited at that point, their children didn't want the farm life, so there was no one else in the family that wanted to take the farm on, which was a little bit sad. Elizabeth and William both worked on the farm, and William was listed as the farm superintendent. And as far as we know, he was the superintendent up until he died. So William died in 1857, and it's a little bit strange. We actually can't find an official record of William's death anywhere. We haven't been able to find a death certificate or any really official notification that he died. The only way that we obviously know that he did die is just through the family history itself. There's two conflicting stories in the family history about how he died. One of them was that he died in a sanitarium, which is now part of the University of Western Sydney in Parramatta. But we don't think that's actually true because it doesn't really fit with the narrative. The family tradition itself is that he actually died on the farm from a farm accident. And the family says that he died after being gored in the head by a bull.
The official state.
That's the official family history. I guess that one's more colourful, so we like that story a lot better.
More likely to.
But it's probably more likely than the other story. But again, we actually can't find any official documents supporting either case. We're still looking through the records, but as far as we can find, the death was actually never officially recorded. We don't really know what happened to Elizabeth after William's death. Where she moved to a little town not far from the farm, and I keep mispronouncing it. Tarago, isn't it?
Tarago.
I keep mispronouncing it. Where did I write it? I think it's Tarago.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tarago.
Have another go, baby.
Tarago. And she had a little house there in Tarago. We assume that she continued to assist on the farm through her life, and we assume that her children also assisted with that as well. But we don't know for sure. We haven't been actually able to find any more records about Elizabeth up until the time that she actually died. So Elizabeth actually died in that house in
Tarago.
On the 21st of November in 1894, and she was 72 at the time. So she died, we think, of a stroke, but the official death was listed as failed lately owing to natural decay and was attacked by slight paralysis, which is, again,
colourful.
It's a more colourful description. But she lived a long life, a long and we hope happy life, and she was survived by all four of her children. So at the time of her death, all four children were still alive and 3 of them were married.
Yeah. So that's a little history of Elizabeth. As we said, we don't know how it came to be in the museum.
Which the Schumer descendant
Yeah.
donated it to the museum.
Sometimes they don't know the importance of these things. We would give anything to be able to actually purchase the original. So if ever the little museum decides to part with it and take it out of its deep, dark corner that it's currently in, it did have quite a bit of water damage on the sampler, and that's just because this is a very old little museum. It's, the walls are only barely standing in some of the rooms, so I'd say that at some point it's either been in probably a shed or something, or in the museum itself there's been like a roof leak or something, so there's quite a bit of water damage, but it would be wonderful to ever be able to buy it and have it restored, because it is seriously one of my favourite samplers I've ever seen. And that's not just because we've done it for this. I fell in love with it the minute I saw it. In actual fact, Brendan hasn't seen the original yet, but now that we're all out of COVID and everything, we're going to take a trip down in the next couple of weeks just so Brendan can see the original. Yep. But yeah, so we hope you love it as much as we do. As I said, we'll put the link to the Homespun Facebook group below.
And also to a stitching shop.
Oh, and a stitching shop. The link, once you're on the Facebook group, the link directly to purchase it from the stitching shop in Colorado will be on the Facebook group. There's always a direct link to the exclusive, but you have to be a member of that group to buy it. You can't just buy it through the shop on its own. So as I said, links below. We hope you love it. If you've got any questions, just let us know below. We're doing our floss tube in a couple of days. We promise it'll be up in a couple of days. Yep. And that's the linen,
yeah,
the
so
white
this is the
clay,
linen she stitched on, which is white clay, which
will be going out to our auto ships
in the next week. Next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Next 2 weeks.
And then later from that to the regular shops. Anyone on our auto will be getting that. But in the meantime, we hope you love her and pop on and have a look on the group. So bye for now.